And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Behind the Tool Belt, episode 263. Today, we have another special guest. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday edition. Stay tuned, and we will be right back after our short intro from our sponsors.
Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. TC Backer, TC Backer.
Welcome to Behind the Tool Belt, where the stories are bold, the conversations are real, and the insights come to you live, raw, and uncut. Every week, host Ty Cobb Backer sits down with game changers, trailblazers, and industry leaders who aren't afraid to tell it like it is. No filters, no scripts, just the truth. Please welcome your host of Behind the Tool Belt, Ty Cobb Backer.
Hey. Welcome back, everybody. Like I said earlier, we have another phenomenal guest. I feel like I'm not prepared enough for this one. Anytime I actually prepare myself, I always feel like that I'm underprepared. But some of the best podcasts I've ever done was like with the least amount of readiness. So I'm kind of hoping this falls in between where I've prepared myself enough. So this turns out to be a great podcast for you and our viewers and our listeners out there and anybody catching us on the replay. But welcome everybody to the stage. Jim Johnson, my man, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I was watching your intro there, and to see a couple of my clients on there, like North Face was on the Hook Agency ad, and just to see that kind of stuff, that brings me a lot of joy to see those folks doing some pretty fun things. I actually took a picture, while I was watching it. Took a picture. I'm going to send it to Josh here in a minute and just say, cool. Hey, man, I saw you today. You're famous.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what this is all about. We're having fun here. We're bringing the truth. And I did an interview the other day and somebody, was asking me like, what do I expect to get out of Behind the Tool Belt? But the first question they asked me was like, how did it get started? And it was to promote one of our charitable events here locally with our construction company. And really, it was just like a Facebook Live. It wasn't even a podcast. And then it just evolved into a podcast. But I guess if I had to answer that question, like, what are we trying to do here? One, fun first and flexible, right? The three F's of it. Of course, you can add family first into that as well, too. But, just the entrepreneurship, leadership, that will directly impact you personally and hopes to make the roofing space a better place, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And hence why, I'm super excited to have you on the show today, Jim, because, you've been involved, you've been a pioneer of so many different things, man, and so many things that I don't even know. And another reason why I wanted you to come on the podcast, because, between Top Rep, Contractor Coach Pro, your new thing that you got coming out that I don't want to let the cat quite out of the bag yet until I actually ask you the question. A whole bunch of other things that, and the content that you put out there is so good and real that I'm actually taking something away from it. It's not about like, how big Jim can swing his hammer or, just, some people that are that are spewing content today it's just about how cool they are. But with you can definitely tell you're a humble guy. You're a seasoned veteran in the industry and a Titan as far as I'm concerned. And to have you on the show and have our viewers and listeners, take something away from this, like I have from all of the free content that you have online right now. It would be selfish of me not to have you on the show. So, and keep it yourself. So.
I'm honored to be here, really and truthfully. I've been able to watch quite a few of your episodes. You do a great job as a host. You keep it very conversational and real, which I enjoy quite a bit. You have some great guests on. You add a lot of value to our industry. And so when you asked, I was like, man, it's a no-brainer. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'll be on your show.
Cool.
And my whole job is to give value at any point at any time that I'm asked. So hopefully I accomplish some of that today and maybe we help some folks out.
Yeah, no, I know you will for sure. So, I mean, most people start out with like, okay, Jim, how did this all get started or give us like your backstory? But I guess I don't want to be like the usual interview that, that I'm sure the same questions that you've asked, 100 times. But again, there's so much that I don't know about you. So I almost feel like I need to ask, kind of like what it was like, what it's like now, and how you got here. And then from there, I'll start pulling some questions out of you, if you don't mind.
Sure. We'll try to keep it as Reader's Digest as we possibly can. Before our show, you and I were talking, and we were talking about some of the things that we found valuable in our lives that like propelled us forward. And you were talking about my bookcase, and I said that's about 1/4 of what I got up there. We talked about the value of reading, and I got really lucky early on to have a mother that was intense about reading. Like, it was a serious thing in our house. And if you can do nothing else, you can get a book. You can pull it up online. There's so many free resources, and just reading and gaining knowledge. But I want to caution people on the width of the knowledge they gain. If you look at my books, they tend to be either business, sales, or spiritual. There'll be those three main things. And that's really what I'm focused on in my life, figuring out what you're focused on and then getting deep so that you actually have some understanding. When you have understanding, now you truly have power. Everybody says knowledge is power. That's not. Knowledge is just facts. That's all it is. But understanding gives you some power, insight, even more power. Like now I understand the thing. It gives me insight so I can actually make wise decisions. I can be discerning about what I do. But whenever we get really wide and we're just at the surface, I call it kind of thin ice knowledge. We don't have much depth. And so it's hard to bring value to others. And I got that early on. And I also got taught the value of personal growth, which all kind of propelled me forward with this idea that, hey, I can be in control of the amount of value I bring into me and the amount of value I push out of me. And I've had some great mentors along the way. A neighbor across the road that took a kind hand towards me, realized that I was a little bit different than the other kids around, taught me what being an entrepreneur was kind of the hard way, and ended up building a landscaping business that made me where I could go to college. And while I didn't finish college because college wasn't right for me, it gave me this understanding that, hey, I was making more money doing landscaping than I was doing in what I would be doing in college. So I went into the health club industry, kind of changed that company quite a bit. They had 3 or 4 locations. I got involved. I kind of think about things quite a bit and got into franchising, built it up to 40 locations. I actually owned a couple of them and did quite well there. Right up until marrying an aerobics instructor and finding out that that wasn't the best choice in my world, although I have an amazing daughter that came out of that situation. But the health club thing went to the side, met a new girl from Wisconsin, and she hated it in Texas. We moved to Wisconsin for 18 years, and I got into the contracting industry. It was very good to me. There was just one problem with it all. I was very focused on what I was going to achieve. Hey, I did big things. It's almost like I was trying to prove other people wrong because I think everybody in my past said I'm going to either be dead or in prison by the time I was 21 because I was just like uber intense individual and not always the smartest guy. And so I was out to prove everybody wrong. We did. We built an amazing company doing between $20 and $30 million a year, all right up until a bookkeeper pilfered the company for about $500,000.
Wow.
And while we were able to survive that, somebody that I looked at as a really good friend, almost like a little brother, decided to go be her partner in a competing business. The other partner that I had that was my best friend decided he didn't want to be partners with me anymore. And I got into this place where I was blaming I'm like, couldn't they see like everything that I had done for them? Like what I changed their lives. They made more money than they've ever made before in their life. They had nicer houses, nicer cars. Their kids were going to nicer schools. And I was very much like in this blame mode, like how in the world could you be doing this to me after everything that I've given you? And I'll never forget, I was sitting on the front steps of my house, a really nice log home, Western Wisconsin, 35 acres. And if you looked at me from the outside, you would go, man, this guy's got it all. He's got everything he wants. There's sports cars and big trucks and ATVs and boats. I was actually considering like buying a plane just to say I have a plane. I didn't even have a pilot's license. And I broke down. I said, like, all that stuff has dust on it and it's not bringing me any joy. And where is the joy in all of this? And not to get all spiritual and all, but, you know, I was like, hey, God, what did I do wrong? What do I do? Where do I go? Because I was out of answers. The first time in my life where there was a problem that I didn't know the answers for. And not like I heard any words or anything like that. I know God didn't speak to Jim and say, hey, Jim, go do this. But this feeling came over me that I was selfish, that I had made everything all about me instead of all about us. And that was the root of my problem. And so from that day forward, I decided to serve or be selfless. And it changed literally in the snap of a finger. My whole persona changed so much so that when I went into work the next day and my front office, a gal named Ann, I walked in and said, hey, Ann, how can I make your job easier? What can I do to make your life better? She looked at me like I had grown horns out of my head. She was like, what in the world is going on with this guy? And it took some time. It took some time for people to actually trust that I was about them and not me. But over time, not only did it start to be a situation where people trusted me, I felt a lot better. I felt better about what I was doing. I felt more fulfilled in what I was doing. I was enjoying what I was doing more. We built up another company at that point and got back to that $20, $30 million. We built a commercial organization doing $20 or $30 million and built a piece of software called Silver Lining that we had 1,500 users on. And the guys over at AccuLinks came to me and said, hey, we want to buy your company. And I became the director of sales and design for AccuLinks, along with an amazing person named Mike over there that we brought AccuLinks to the world and had a blast doing it. And so I have kind of this history of when I get behind something and I believe something is really good, I like to make a thing. Like it becomes real, whether that's the health clubs or the contracting business or software and now coaching. That's really what my MO is. And I was sitting after about 5 years with AccuLinks and kind of getting that feel again, like, hey, I'm not feeling real fulfilled. We had some disagreements and where software was headed, not anything negative, just, different beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a little bit of a spiritual moment. And I felt like I needed to resign. First time I've ever resigned from anything without knowing what I was going to do next. And I went and met the CEO, Rich Spanton, love that guy to death, and let him know I was resigning. He was a little surprised, shocked. If you knew the history, I was kind of the face of the company back then. And I said, I have something different to do. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I can't do this anymore. And we put a press release together, let everybody know everything's great with AccuLinks. I just have a new path to chase. And I helped replace myself there with Michael Pinley and some other folks to make sure everything went smoothly. It was really important to me because I love that company. I love that culture that we had built. And so all that happens over about a 2-week period. And I'm flying home. Press release goes out while I'm in the air. Like, I take off the ground, press release goes out. I get off the plane and, you get reception again.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the days when your phone wasn't working on your plane. Yep. And my phone started going off like crazy. It just started buzzing all over the place. Buzz, 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 buzz. I'm like, what is going on? And I started listening to voicemails, and it was all these like contractors and even distributors and folks like that. Hey, we want you to come work for us. Be a general manager, run our sales, be a partner, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. The very last voicemail was from my grandmother, letting me know that my grandfather was in the hospital. And I dropped everything, didn't even go home, went straight to the hospital, which is about 3.5 hours away from where I lived at the time, and proceeded to spend the next 3 months with him as he was going through the last months of his life. And got to share with him, be present with him. He's the most like a dad that I have in the world. It taught me what good character was all about. And he asked me a great question. He said, hey, What are you going to do now? I said, I think I'm just going to golf and fish. I've done very well. I don't have to do anything. So I think I'm just going to golf and fish.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, that's going to last about 2 weeks. He's like, so what do you want to be? I went, wow, I haven't been asked that question in a long time, but what I really want to be, like you're asking, I want to be a Division I basketball coach. That's what I want to be. And he goes, that sounds great, but you're 42 years old. I don't think a lot of coaches start it for. I said, well, I coached back in the day at the Division III as an assistant. I think I worked my way back in. He goes, yeah, but what's it going to take? 5, 10, 20 years to get to where you want to be as a head coach in a Division I program? I said, yeah, I get your point, but I still think I can get it done. He goes, well, tell me this. Is it the basketball or the coaching?
Good question.
That's what I said. That good question. I can't answer that one as quickly. Give me a night to sleep on that. So I came back the next day and I said, I really thought about it, and I love basketball. I do. I love the sport, but I also love baseball. I love that sport. Coached that for many years as well. And but I also coached other things. I coached salespeople. I coached leaders. I coached business owners, and I coached a bunch of people throughout time. I coached youth groups, done mission trips and things like that. And I said, so it's the coaching. Like, that's the thing. And he goes, okay, what are you great at? I went, well, that's easy. I'm good at this contracting thing. I've been able to do that 3 times, do it very well all 3 times, minus the big mistakes of not paying attention to my books and trust but verify. And so I can help people avoid those kinds of mistakes and speed up the process to finding that success that they're looking for. He goes, you should probably do that. And so he was the inspiration behind Contractor Coach Pro. And I went back and I called some of the folks that had left me messages. I said, hey, I'm not coming to work for you. I'm not going to be your partner, but if you want to meet once a week and I'll help you build the thing, that's what I'm going to do. And fortunately, a couple of those people said yes. And then it was 4, then it was 8, then it was 16, it was 22. And it started to be more of a business than just, helping some folks out. Started to bring some people on. And here we are today, 10.5 years later with Contractor Coach Pro. We've helped thousands of contractors at this point take their businesses to 7, 8, and even a few 9-figure companies out there. And it's been an absolute joy to do. We really love what we do. And we're a little bit different about it. We're not a niche. Like, we're not a marketing coach. We're not a sales coach. We're not a hiring and recruiting type coach. We cover 12 aspects of the business. It's actually why I wrote that book sitting right there, Contract Print, because what I learned is there was 12 pillars of what we do, and 6 of them are foundational and 6 of those are operational. And most of us as contractors spend our time in the operational world. How do I get more leads? How do I sell those leads? How do I produce them? And how do I recruit and hire more people? And that's what most people came to us for. Hey, can you help me scale my business? I want to recruit and hire a bunch of people with a good sales process. I'm like, yeah, sounds wonderful. What is the rest of your processes going to look like? What do job descriptions look like? What does your accountability look like? What does your finance situation look like? And really started to drive people more towards that foundational stuff. Because if you get that right, it's easy to build a big business. It's just the hard, boring work that most of us that are A-type entrepreneurs don't like to do. But if you do it, you can build a pretty amazing, long-lasting, sustainable business that you can achieve your dreams with, whether you want to grow a big one, you want to pass it on, sell it. That's our main goal, is to figure out what you really want to do in life and help you get there without sacrificing everything that's important to you, your family, your health, your mind, just all these things that we tend to believe the lies of the world that we have to sacrifice everything to get ahead. I would argue that if you aren't willing to sacrifice those things, you'll think differently. And because you think differently, you solve problems in a different way that gets you where you want to go anyway. So that was long, but that kind of gives you a good picture of how it all came together.
Yeah, no, there was so much good stuff there and so many questions. Half of them, actually 3/4 of them I probably forgot, but there's a lot in there. I had no idea about the AccuLink story, which is pretty amazing because that's one of the biggest, CRMs in the roofing space that there is today. So that's congratulations for being the founder or being at least playing a part in that. But
Yeah, I would say I'm not a founder. That was actually Rich Spanton, but all the front end side of that software, so it's a sales oriented part of it, that was my stuff being brought in and added to the administrative back end to make it one thing. And I was a believer in it. I went and promoted it pretty heavily. To get funny thing, back in like 2009, you go to somebody's office and say, hey, yeah, all that stuff you have on your server there, we want to put that on the cloud, just out there in the middle of all over the place. And they're like, no way, man, that sounds terrible. And you look at us today, and we actually could see the future. Like everything you do is in the cloud somewhere. So pretty cool to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's a heck of an accomplishment in itself, and when you were talking about your journey there and you were sitting on the front porch, I thought to myself, there's a couple questions within that, and I was looking at it like almost like a spiritual journey, and you didn't even know it at the time that you were on. And some of us need to experience like a spiritual bankruptcy or a spiritual bottom before we can bounce back, and the sad thing is, I guess a lot of people don't bounce back or don't get it. Like, I need to change my ways. And I guess my question for you is like, at that moment, I guess there was a lot going through your head. Like, I guess my first question would be like, why didn't you just quit at that point in time? Why didn't you just throw in the towel, dive into the bottle? What kept you, what made you decide, like, I'm going to go into the office today and I'm going to change? And I know that change wasn't easy. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Wow, that's such a good question, Ty. In all honesty, I did think about those things. I did think about quitting and the ultimate quitting. Like, hey man, I'm going to end this all. It's just not worth it. I didn't do what I set out to do in the way I set out to do it. I failed everybody. I had all of those whenever you get quiet and when you get alone, and I think it's a big reason why people avoid it. I think it's a big reason why people are attached to these devices, is because they're scared of being with their thoughts. Because if things aren't going the right way for you, those thoughts tend to be on the dark side. And all of that crossed my mind. But there was also something else that crossed my mind, that that wouldn't have been put on me, this feeling that I needed to serve, if I didn't have more to do and if I wasn't worth it. And I think there's so much out there in the world today where folks live in these extremes, where they're living in this place of where they don't feel like they're worth it, or they're alone, or they're depressed, or they're homeless, or all of that, right? But there's also this place over here where we're busy and there's too much, and it's anxiety and that extreme as well. And I started to realize that as time went on, but that answering your question, the reason that I went into work that next day is because I felt I was worth it and that I had value to bring to others. And it would be a disservice and really a sin to do otherwise. And so I walked into work the next day. So that's the short answer to your question.
No, that's good too, because I've been in low places, over my life and my career too, and I've had those same moments where it's kind of like, I have a choice, I have a decision to make. Am I going to change my ways? And I think for a lot of people, it's so hard for them to see where they may have played a part on how things are unfolding right now and before my eyes. And
well, think about it. How awful of a human being must I have been for somebody that I looked at as a really good friend, a little brother almost, to go be partners with a thief? And I could actually show him, prove it to him. A thief, like, this is what exactly she did and where the money went and all of it. And he still chose to go do that instead of be in a relationship with me. What that told me is I was worse than a thief. And that's pretty hard hitting sometimes. And it's a hard thing to admit. And, I can talk about it today, but and I wish I would have talked about it sooner in my life to share with others. But I think it's embarrassment. I think it's, pride. I think ego and all that stuff kind of comes into play on that. But it's important to me today to let anybody and everybody know you're absolutely worth it. There is no doubt about that. and you can provide value to others. So if you're thinking about giving up or throwing the towel in or anything like that, we got some tools. That's some of the stuff that we've been working on to help folks out, because one of the things we found out when we were coaching, because when you're coaching, you're doing business, strategy, practical, tactical, that kind of stuff, and getting that stuff in place. And you're also building leadership skills and things like that. But what we didn't really realize is we were teaching them this way of doing all of it without sacrificing everything. And so that was the big challenge. And that's what had changed for me. Like that first day kind of became this spiritual, like growth, development, that kind of thing. But even after that, as I got more comfortable there were still things in my life where I felt like, something's not quite right, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm going to go research and study and observe and really think about these things to kind of get them figured out, because I wanted, for me personally, to live as prosperous of a life as I possibly could. And I wasn't feeling that way, and I wanted to feel that way. And so after about 10 years of some pretty intense study, reading a lot of books and observing a lot of folks that I felt were truly prosperous, not fake prosperous. You see a lot of fake prosperity out there. I think that word has gotten a bad rap, being prosperous, because I think a lot of people associate it with wealth and gaining of status, power, wealth, money, that kind of stuff. And that's not really what it is. If you actually look at the word itself, the root of it is an action, not a noun. It's not a thing to achieve. It's a way to be. And once I kind of clicked to what that is, then I was like, well, what does that look like on the way to be? And so that's what we've been working on.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that. A couple of things there. It's never too late to change, right? No matter how horrible the situation that you put yourself through, and typically it's something that you've put yourself through, at least from my experience. Change can happen. It can happen several times a day. I can choose to start over as many times as I need to, but in those moments that I think, that have happened to me where I'm thinking that it's the worst thing that has ever happened to me, usually turns out to be some of the best things that has ever happened to me, because there's a lot of change, and within that change there's growth. And a lot of times that growth is painful. And I want to talk about that with you a little bit, because even though you went to work that day and you told your assistant, like, hey, what can I do for you? And she looked at you like you had a third eyeball. Right. And of course, there's a lot of emotions that go into that too, because like you had mentioned, that takes time. There's going to be people that are doubting you. You're going to be doubting yourself. Am I doing the right thing? But how did you know, or what did you do to level yourself up? Because of course you've lived one way for so long. Okay. And I know you read a lot of books, but like, how did you know how or what to apply at the time? Like, okay, you went in there, you talked to Mary, and you said, I'm going to give you whatever you need and all this stuff. And that can go both ways too, like where you go overboard and then you become, a doormat. And I've done the same thing where it's kind of like I put myself in situations where then people start to expect, and then I get a resentment because they're expecting things. So how did you navigate all of that through, like seeking mentorships? What books were you reading? How long did it take for you to start feeling comfortable with you and that you weren't living a lie anymore?
So first off, let's address the living the lie part, because I'm wired in a certain way, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are wired in this way, that when they're in something and on something, they're all in. Like there's not any kind of like balance there. And one of the very first things I did was I started to not as diligently as I do today, but I started to read the Bible and started to understand. And I really kind of focused on Proverbs, like just the wisdom part of stuff. It's like, I'm not sure I want any of the rest of that, but what does this wisdom thing look like? And I started to apply a lot of those things, and being who I am, a person that tends to be attracted to the extreme. You're right. I kind of went overboard, and like it was just all the time and in everybody's face all the time. And it does lead to this, take from you type of feel. And I had to learn a little bit more. So some of the people that along the way that I had originally read through the perspective or lens of how to get ahead, I went back to and I went, let me reread that again. And how do I help others get ahead? And in a way that it doesn't sacrifice me. And so what I started to discover that there was additional things. There was these 7 areas of my life that I called living prosperously. As the only real definition that I had for it that needed my attention. And so whenever I felt off, I now had something I could put my finger on and go, it's that thing. And so that took about 10 years to get all of that kind of figured out. But folks that were like influential on me and had been for a long time before that, even I just read them through a different lens. John Maxwell, James Collins, I think those are probably the 2 most. Gino Wickman with Traction, a great book. Zig Ziglar, and going back to his stuff, his whole thing was, if I can help enough people achieve their dream, I'll achieve mine. And I didn't even click to that.
I was waiting for you to say Zig Ziglar. I wondered if you followed him or not.
Very much so. The young folks today don't even know who that guy is, but I would encourage you to go and read some of his content. Brian Tracy is another one of those folks that I spent a lot of time reading. But there's also the other writers like Bonhoeffer and C.S. Lewis, and on that spiritual side that start to let us know that it's where the intention comes from. So if my intention is to serve me, that's going to have one outcome. And if my intention is to serve God according to his will and his instruction, that's going to have a different outcome. And it's really up to you to make the choice of which one's the right one for you. I think so many of us, and really here in Western society, just who we are and what we're about, we are in this place of ownership. You'll see millions of books about it, take ownership, extreme ownership, and ownership. And really what it is you're looking for is authority. Like, hey, I'm the one, right? Well, I hate to break it to everybody. You're not. You're not the one. You're just another one. And there's been millions of just like you before you that thought they were the one that nobody even remembers. You think about all the billions of people that have ever lived and just try to name off as many as you can. I bet you don't get over 50. So the reality is there's something more to it than you and your ownership and your authority. And I made a decision. To be obedient, which is hard. That's not a word that most of us in America love to hear. We want to hear, hey man, I got it. I'm under control. A friend of mine, Reggie Brock, he's such a good, amazing guy. He says, we believe in the new Holy Trinity, me, myself, and I. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really a good way to go about doing things. But when I decided to be obedient, the thing I was not expecting that happened, and I went, I get it now. All burden came off. I don't live anxiously anymore. I feel very free. I feel like, hey, I go do what I've been instructed to do. I'm going to let God take care of the rest. There's no guarantees. I don't live life in an effort to be happy. I do live life in an effort to be joyful and kind to other folks and be valuable. And so it's taken a lot of burden off of me. I don't worry about what you think about me, Ty, or what anybody else thinks about me. I'm comfortable in who I am. I know my identity as a believer, and that makes things really easy for me.
Yeah, that's what makes you prosperous.
Yeah. Sometimes giving up control puts you in control. It's really cool.
Yeah. No, I like that. I was going to ask you, and you started to touch on it. I want, what are some of the biggest changes that you started to see in your life when you started down the spiritual path or digging deeper into the spiritual aspect of God and things like that? Like, what were some of the biggest changes? What type of people were you starting to attract, in your life at that, and today, I guess not even back then, but still today? Like, what are the biggest changes?
Oh, that's a really good one. Who was I attracting? It was 2 different types. One's of good character that needed a place to belong wherever they had been before. It was anti their character, right? But there was also, this is the part that was the beautiful part, the people that wanted to adjust their character and be different than what they were, and that there might be a different way of achieving these things. It attracted them too. And that's actually given me more joy, to let folks know that it's okay to be good to people. Now, I know we're talking a lot spiritually, and this is
Mhm.
one of those things I really want to caution people on. A lot of times you hear the word spiritual, Bible, God, all that other stuff, and you go, that stuff's garbage. And you throw the baby out with the bathwater and don't even listen to what's going on. The things that are in that book, the people that live as believers, can be valuable. You should take that value and be grateful and thankful for it, and not discount it just because it comes from a spiritual or godly place. Funny enough, a lot of the stuff that's in the Bible, Proverbs to be specific, actually came from Assyrians and Egyptians and things like that. Like when you really study and dig into it, they didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. They went, that's good, and that aligns with God's will. We're going to put that in our book. Maybe think about that in your life. What are you throwing out that could be valuable to you because of the paradigms that you believe, whether they be spiritual, political, sociological, all those other things? You just immediately dismiss them because they're aligned with this thing you don't agree with, when there's actually value there. And funny enough, like I'm a big Bible person, but I've also read, the Buddhist writings. I've read the Stoic writings. One of my favorite books is by Marcus Aurelius. There's still value there. Don't give up on that value.
Mhm.
Now, you asked, like, what was I finding and what was happening? And so
Mhm.
that kind of leads into this. We talked about it before the show, but this PH7. I've been
Mhm.
talking about that. People have seen little glimpses of it. You're going to see a lot more of it because it's something that we've been working really diligently on for the last 18 months or so. And I wish I could say it was all me. Like, it's not. I have some really good friends. My circle is really powerful, that has really helped walk through this, because originally it was just a concept. Like, hey, there's these 7 things, and I know what those things are, and I know how to address it whenever something's not right in my life. But I've had some other people help me bring clarity to it, so I could help share it with everybody else.
Mhm.
And so this question got asked to me. I was really lucky. I mentioned John Maxwell as one of those folks that's had a pretty strong impact in my world, and I got invited to a thing that was called high capacity leadership. And I was like, hey, how much does this cost? I figured out some kind of sales pitch. And it wasn't. It was like they had watched me and knew who I was and said, no, we're going to pay your way. We would like you to come and be in this group of about 30 other leaders that we think are doing it right. And we just want to see what happens. And the question got asked, is there anything that you do in your life that's unique that allows you to live a balanced or a good life, like that type of thing? And we're kind of all sitting around a big old table and everything, and I'm looking both ways, and nobody's saying anything. And I kind of sheepishly raise my hand. I'm like, yeah, I kind of got a thing, this little recipe that I kind of lean on whenever I feel off in my world. And they're like, well, tell me more. And I said, well, there's these 7 things. And
Mhm.
so they're like, okay, what are the 7 things? So I'll list them off real quick. Mind, time, body, community, work, spirit, and impact. And I'll dig into those just a little bit for the viewers so they can kind of understand what's going on. But you think about it, I started with spiritual growth. The door was open to me. I walked through that door, and the spiritual growth improved my life and made me feel more fulfilled about what I was doing. But
Mhm.
I still felt like there were other doors that needed to be opened. And so I started to consider my life and what that looked like, and where was I missing something? And I was missing something in the mental side, uh, mental creativity, strength, and capability. That was really where that all started. And so that's the mind one. And if we're not spending enough time flexing this muscle between our ears, it's just like any other muscle, it atrophies. But whenever we spend time being creative and thinking and problem solving, that's what I tend to do in those quiet times now. When it gets quiet for me, I don't walk into the dark place. I walk into the place of light, and I'm really thinking about how to help and serve other people, and how can I create an experience unlike anything anybody's ever seen before. How can I be remembered and leave an impact on somebody that's valuable to them and that they share with others that impacts them without me gaining anything from it as far as recognition goes. I don't care about that. I want to be valuable to whoever I come in contact with. So, but the problem with it is, like, you go, oh, mine, I want to get all over that because I was all over the spiritual thing. And you just like, oh, full out there, and then a full out there in the mind. And as I started to parse these things out, I started to realize that there was extremes in each one of them. And so as I learned more about that and read more about living in the extreme, there was some Aristotle behind some of that. Some of the great components of the Bible talk quite a bit about living in the extremes as well. I started to realize that I had been looking at it wrong. I'd been looking at it as empty or full. So like this idea of I'm empty in this thing, or I'm full and I'm good, right? Like I think a lot of people look at it that way. I'm spending plenty of time with my family and everything's wonderful. I'm not spending enough time with my family and everything's terrible. Is a good example of community, right? Well, the reality is it wasn't really that. It was more like have you ever seen a litmus test before? You know what that is? And so you like test water for a pool or a hot tub or something, put the little thing in there and it lights up colors. It was more like that there was an extreme that was positive or an extreme that was negative, and somewhere in between was this sweet spot, this place where what I like to term it as healthy tension, not balance. I don't believe we can live in balance. It's that's one of my hardcore beliefs after a lot of study, is that you got these 7 things, and sometimes one's going to be a little bit over here, and that's going to cause one of them to be over here down below, like whichever one. Wherever you're putting effort is going to require sacrifice somewhere else. What I don't want to do is I don't want to effort all the way to the extreme where I'm totally sacrificing everything else. And so when I realize that it's more like that than being in this sweet spot, I can start to know where my effort starts to go beyond healthy and into the extreme. And when we live in those extremes, that's the dangerous place. That's the dangerous place where you get into the negative side, where folks are feeling depressed, alone, that type of feel to them, or they're feeling overwhelmed, obsessive, exclusive, those type of things. And so those are dangerous places to live our lives. So that's really what this has turned into, is I shared that with these guys and what that looked like. And the questions went on for like an hour and 40, like all the time we had, like the questions kept coming. And even after we walked out of that session, I had a group of people that were all kind of asking me more questions. And what about this? What about meditation? Where does that fall? I'm like, it falls in mind. And so anything that they were able to throw at me, it fit in one of those 7 categories. And I could explain how it fit and then what to really think about in each one of them. Since that time, that was 18 months ago, those folks are still calling me as they're working their way through their own journey with this idea of living a prosperous life. Because the funny thing is, the people that I've noticed that have lived the most prosperous life don't have the most stuff. They tend to be the most generous. They tend to be the one that when they walk in the room, you want to listen to them. They tend to be the one that create an experience when you're with them. They tend to put you first. And that's the sign. That's what I'm looking for whenever I'm looking for prosperous people. I don't care what you have. I could care less about that. It's what do you give? I think that's really a big sign of somebody that's truly a prosperous person.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now, I'm glad that you Yeah, I agree 100%. I always use the word success, not necessarily prosperous. Because I think most people define success as money, wealth, right? And I look at success differently and wealth differently. How much time am I spending with my family? Does my family love me? Have they visited me over the holidays? Right? To me, that's a win. That's success. And
Yeah.
of course, you were talking about it on a deeper level. And it's funny because I think it was this past Saturday. And I'm glad you brought up balance because for whatever reason, I tend to talk to myself and I talk to myself a lot. And I'm a visionary. And for whatever reason, I said, I need to start seeking balance. And I didn't mean it in terms of like work-life blend and I don't want anybody to take this wrong, especially if you're a newer entrepreneur, because unfortunately, I think in the early days of business, and you got to wear multiple hats, and that sometimes requires a lot of hours. And if you're more worried about making sure that you're spending, an ample enough time with your family and stuff like that, and somebody else might, for argument's sake, I don't believe in that. Like you're going to find that balance, especially early on. But what I was thinking is like having that balance because of things being out of balance, like a scale. I'm looking at it like a scale. Okay. How's my scale? And it's never going to be fully balanced. But if like you said, I loved how you said, if I'm spending so much time and piling a bunch of stuff on this side of the scale, something over here suffering, it's going to bottom out. So like I'm constantly seeking, but in my life at this time, in the season that I'm in, I have a couple scales that I'm trying to juggle and balance. Okay. So I guess my question for you, if I'm not seeking balance, and that would have been a whole other podcast. So I'm just going to cut myself off right
No,
there.
that's good. Good.
Okay. So if I'm not seeking balance, Jim, then what do you call that thing in the middle? You said, you got your positive and you got your negative. What is that then?
So I'm going to give you two analogies because you use the scales analogy, and I used to kind of think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy I think might fit that a little bit better is a
Mm-hmm.
teeter totter.
Okay.
When you're sitting out, you remember being a kid being on a teeter totter?
Yep.
When you're sitting out on the very ends, if the other person jumps up, you slam down, you smack your tailbone, right?
Oh yeah.
Then also, if it goes the other way around, off the teeter totter you go. That's like living in the extremes on those teeter totter, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The closer you bring that sitting point to the center fulcrum, the less likely you are to smack your butt or get thrown off of the teeter totter. And so you're trying to live not on that very extreme edge, but closer to the middle, but not necessarily balanced, because we need this thing called healthy tension. A really good friend of mine, he was the mind behind all the GAF programs for contractors. Dave Harrison, I don't know if you know him or not. He was the chief marketing officer for GAF. We had the fortunate opportunity to have him as part of Contractor Coach Pro as we were working through a few things. And I had always known of the concept of healthy tension, but he gave me a great analogy. It's like having a rubber band on your wrist. When it's too tight, you're like super uncomfortable, right? Like that doesn't feel good, and you want to take that thing off.
Mm-hmm.
But also if it's really loose, it's like sliding up and down, also uncomfortable, doesn't feel good. But when it's just right? Like when it's just right, it's not sliding up and down your arm, it feels comfortable, but it still has a bit of pressure to it. That's where we want to live. We want to feel that we've got a little bit of challenge, this healthy tension. And so let's say I'm going to go back to your example of a young entrepreneur getting into our world. You're right. They do have to work harder. And we have 3 phases that we normally go through when we attempt anything that's like being an entrepreneur. You have a building phase, that's first, then a maintaining phase, and then you get this little bit of an enjoyment piece too, right? Like there's these 3 pieces that we get to live in. The building phase should be short. It shouldn't take very long if you're truly after being successful with it. So yes, you're going to work some more hours, but I wouldn't suggest working 60, 80, 90, 100 hours a week, because the truth of the matter is After about 30 hours for most people. Now, I want to be really clear here. People are unique. There are some people that can work 50, 60 hours and be really productive. But most people, and when I say most, 80% plus, lose productivity after about 30 hours of good work. And I want to be really clear about that too. Doing work well. If you thought about that and said, hey, that seems to be true because I've noticed that I work a lot of hours, but I don't get ahead. And I say, okay, I'm going to work this many hours, but I'm going to work really well during that time. I'm not going to allow for all the distractions. I'm not going to allow for all the other stuff. I'm going to do what is necessary, even though I may not like it. Your building phase becomes a lot shorter. That sacrifice that you're making becomes much less, because I was a young entrepreneur at one point. I can remember getting into this industry and telling my wife, I'll never forget this. Whenever I got into storm restoration, I'm like, whoa, where has this been all my life? This is amazing. Honey, if you give me the next 2 years, I will change the trajectory of our life. But I'm going to work 80, 90, 100 hours. So those 2 little kids we have, those are yours. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to change our lives, and everything's going to be wonderful. If I could go back and do that over again, I would have just thought differently about how I worked, not how much work I did.
Mm-hmm.
There were things I missed. I missed the first steps of my daughter. I missed t-ball games for my son. And at the time I went, it's just a t-ball game, or it's just her first step. I saw his first step. How big of a difference is her first step from his? Mm-hmm. Those were the things I was telling myself. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, wow, I missed a t-ball game because of work. Like, really? What did that bring me that I couldn't have gotten anyway if I would have just thought differently about the way I do work? And so that's one of the 4 pillars of this prosperous human thing. So 7 elements is one of the pillars. There's another pillar called orbital thinking instead of traditional thinking. Traditional thinking means that we have an outcome we would like to have and a problem that needs to be solved, and we work our way step by step to achieve the outcome. That's traditional thinking. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And so what we do is we effort and we improve, and then we fail, and then we improve a little bit more and go back a couple of steps, and we kind of do this number back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until we get to where we want to go. And that's kind of traditional thinking. And we take no consideration of, number one, where are we? What stage are we in? Where are we at progressing towards this thing? Mm-hmm. And what type of investment do I have to make? Because that's time and money, and that means sacrifice. And so what am I sacrificing? We don't consider those 2 things. And whenever you consider those 2 things on your way to this outcome, and then you look through it through the lens of the lifestyle you want to live, that's the thing orbiting the closest to your desire. And that's what moved for me. My thing was, the lifestyle is the thing I'm going to achieve whenever I get to the outcome. Mm-hmm. And I move that all the way to the center of, this is the lifestyle I want to live. So how do I have to think differently about how am I going to achieve that outcome? If I'm really low in a stage and somebody's proposed something amazing to me, I'm going to have a lot to learn to get to there. And I may not have that amount of time. And so that's going to make me say a no to that. I say no an awful lot nowadays. Mm-hmm. Or if the investment is immense, whether that's time or money, I'm sacrificing something that might be important to me. And I'm not willing to do that either, because there's a lifestyle that I have chosen to live. Yeah. And I think most people need to get clear on that before they decide how much effort they want to go and put into something, because they're going to sacrifice some things that are really important to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I look at our industry and it's frustrating to me, the folks that have sacrificed family. There's a lot of divorce in our industry. There's a lot of just not being with the family because the work comes first. There's a lack of health, both physically and mentally. There's a lot of addiction in our industry. Like, all of those things come from this being obsessed about doing something instead of being healthy about doing something. So that place that you were looking for that's called balance, I'd be looking for what's healthy tension. What can I do where I put a little more effort here, knowing I'm going to sacrifice something over here, but I'm not willing to sacrifice everything over there. That puts you in this space of going, I'm going to do my work well so I can push those two this way. I'm going to put less work here and then be in maintaining mode instead of building mode, because maintaining takes less effort. You can still improve and grow and do all the things that need to be done, but it takes less effort. It's just super important to me to like share what this looks like. It's a big concept, and I know that. I try to simplify it as much as possible. Hey, let's just figure out the 7 things. Put the finger on the one that's the door you need to open where you're struggling the most. Maybe you're not getting enough time to think. Maybe you're not spending enough time. Here's the deal. You don't take care of your body and turn it into a high-performing, optimized machine. Guess what? Your work's going to suck. Your time that you spend with your family, you're not going to want to spend time. You want to take a nap. And so those things are really important to consider in this sacrifice back and forth between these extremes. And so the 7 things, if you know what they are, you can put your finger on them. Then you can start to look at, hey, am I living over in the extreme on the positive side? Or am I living in the extreme on the negative side? How do I push that more towards the sweet spot so I can have some healthy tension around this where I'm still growing, but I'm not sacrificing everything that's so important?
Yeah, no, that's so good. That's so good. And that's kind of where I'm at in my journey, because I was that entrepreneur that missed the T-ball games and the first days of school and all of those things. And I like how you'd mentioned like what this, and we're talking, we're going back. I got a 32-year-old. So it's like, I gained nothing. Like looking back 32 years ago, I gained nothing, but I missed that first day of school. I missed that first step that the baby took. I missed the football game. I missed all these things. And really, honestly, it wasn't worth it. Like I'm not a gazillionaire today because I've missed all these things. Right. And if you have to work 60 hours a week, it doesn't matter which 60 you work either. And I think when you were talking about how would I do it differently, I would definitely do it differently, right? And focus. There would be more things that I would be more intentional about and not just, and I think a lot of it, we talked a couple podcasts ago, we were talking about living by accident, on purpose. Like today I try to live more like with purpose. Like I do things with more intention today. And most of it's all about having impact on other people. But also going back to what you were saying, like it starts with personal development. Me taking care of me, because if I'm not eating right, I can't feed other people. And pun intended, I have to eat right. I have to exercise. I have to get plenty of rest. I have to spend that balance, for lack of better terms, amount of time with my family if I want to be creative at work. Joseph Hughes said something or posted something the other day. It's like a lot of my great concepts or thoughts or business ideas actually happened when I'm with my family out in the backyard throwing a baseball. You know what I mean? We're changing the environment and changing my mindset and putting myself in a different place and actually being where my feet are. It's
really, really good that he shared that with you. That's something I learned as well, that when I'm not behind this desk and doing all the time, when I'm out walking, I'm actually thinking. And some of my best stuff comes from that. So I've made that an intentional part of my day. Twice a day, every single day, I go outside and I walk for 20 minutes. And I'm not walking to get exercise, although that's a good stacking effort. Like I'm getting some exercise. I'm actually walking to think a little bit. And to, especially if I'm at a place where I'm having a tough time breaking through on something, if I just go take a walk for 20 minutes, it's amazing how many times the answer is just sitting there, but I was so in it that I couldn't think about it. And there's a lot of things, like this is why it took me 10 years. You talked about the body, right? So what you eat, your exercise, and those kinds of things. I can give you 2 things just right now that are the 2 biggest problems in our American society today. A lack of hydration, that's number 1, and sleep deprivation, that's number 2. Because we're in the grind every day. We believe in this grind culture, which I'm not a believer in that at all. As anybody that says that word to me, it just makes my skin crawl. It's like, are you serious? If it's a grind, why are you doing it? That sounds terrible. That doesn't sound joyful in any way or fulfilling in any way. I'm just going to go grind it out today. Now, discipline, that's a different thing. And I really enjoy discipline. Grit, that's a different thing. And I enjoy that as well. But I think we have perpetuated this myth that through hard work, success can be achieved, which in truth can be, but it doesn't have to be. And that was the kicker for me. The truth of the matter is it doesn't have to be. It's just the way that's being purported to us. And okay, I'm going to go that way. There's some great books out there. You asked like some of the people that influenced me. All of your listeners, if they would go and read the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, change their life. We teach it to our contractors. Like, how do I put myself in the most productive points, the most productive things I do that earn me money and give me fulfillment while setting everything else aside? And there's actually a recipe for doing that. It's called the drip matrix. And those types of things, it's because we don't have the knowledge. And I bet you there's probably millions, maybe, but I'll go with thousands of people that have read that book that never applied it. They just read it through, got the knowledge. It's a bunch of facts, didn't do anything with it because they didn't understand it. But once you understand it and the value of it, it changes the way that you look at work and you go, that's pretty neat. Because I'll be honest with you guys, I work in real work about 20 to 25 hours a week.
Wow. And
I could have done that at any moment in my life. I just didn't know any better and I didn't understand it. Now that I understand it, anybody can do it. It's amazing. So it's things like that that we want to help with. It's things like that that I want to share with others and help them come to this understanding that it's not all about what we've been told to go and get. It's about something completely different.
Yeah, good conversation. Good stuff that you shared with us today. We're coming up on our hour mark here. Jim, that was amazing. I mean, I feel like I definitely want to have more conversations with you because I have a lot more questions, personal questions for me that I would like to know. And I didn't even get through 75% of the questions that I actually had for you. One, I think you answered most of them. Like I didn't even have to ask you any of the questions. You were just on point and articulated, what it is that you're about, what it is that you're giving, the value that you're giving to people and the impact that you're having on many people's lives. But before we get off here, and I know you're into books and you just had mentioned Dan Martell's book, and you mentioned the Bible a couple of times, but what would be one book that you would suggest somebody read and not just read once, but like a yearly book? Like what's your yearly go-to book? It can be a personal, it could be, related to business.
Wow. That's such a good question. I read books differently now than I used to. I used to be voracious. I mean, we're talking 40 to 52 books a year. My goal was to read a book a week. I don't read that way anymore. My goal is to get through one book in a quarter. And so I'm reading 4 books in a year. This was actually a great post by Reggie a few days ago. I mentioned him earlier, but he said, everybody's all about making these resolutions and stuff. And those resolutions tend to be about adding. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go make this money, and whatever it is. He's like, what do you already have? And what do you need to get rid of? And so the what do I already have thing, I kind of did this number right here. And I'm like, man, I got a bunch of good stuff back there that I haven't read in a while. And maybe I should spend some time there. And for me, and this is actually a newer book, John Maxwell's got a good book out there right now called High Road Leadership. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
Yeah, I got it.
It's a great book. He actually gave it to me, signed. We literally got the first 30 copies, that awesome group of folks. And it's an amazing book about how to lead in a way that you're focused on the people that you're leading achieving their potential, because when they achieve their potential, you can achieve yours. And doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's the big part, is just to do things for the right reasons. I tell you right now, if you're feeling lacking in any way, it's because you know, whether subconsciously or consciously, that what you're doing isn't for others, it's for you. And that is not very fulfilling in the end. So I would lean into that, dig into that, ask yourself why you're feeling that way and why you believe the things you believe. I think that's a question we don't ask ourselves nearly enough. Why do we believe what we believe? But it, like I said, it took me 10 years of pretty intense study to get this to where it is. And now another 10 years of actually living it and continuing the journey. It's not perfect by any means. It's a journey. It's going to be a lifelong thing. And there's no way I can solve it all by the time I die, whenever that may be. But I hope that it's helpful and that somebody else uses it to continue with it and make it something amazing. I hope one of these days.
Yeah. Such a great answer. I have one more question for you. And I think I know the answer to this, but you had mentioned that, you read one book a quarter. Why do you do that now, opposed to reading 52 a year?
Because I don't just read them, I study them. And I study them in a pretty specific way. I'm looking to approach that book with questions first. So whatever I'm reading, it doesn't matter. I kind of test myself first. What do I already know? And so if I'm reading a book on leadership, what do I already know about leadership? That's a pretty extensive list. I kind of keep that one, and that's one I've been working on a lot in my life, for all my life. But if I'm reading a new book, like maybe on economics or something like that, what do I already know about economics? That way, when I read the book, I test whether my knowledge is true or not. And so every book I read, any information I take in, the first question I always ask myself, is it true? So if somebody says something, is there any, like if I look at that, I go, is there any other circumstance or observance I've made that says it's not? Because a lot of people will say, this is the way things are. And I'll go look and I'll be like, no, I kind of see this person over here, like they're doing it a different way and they're still getting there. That's why I think it's so wonderful. People are unique. And while these 7 things are not unique, I actually think they're pretty much laws of the human condition. Their approach to them and their need in them and how they solve the problem is going to be unique. And I think that's pretty cool. That's one of the beauties of the creative creatures that God made us to be. So first thing I'm doing is I'm looking for, to ask that question, is what I'm reading true? And then I'm going to go through it and I'm going to highlight things based on context. So is that context for now? Is it for the future, or is it in the past? Who was the author actually speaking to? What did it mean to the person they were speaking to? And then how does that apply to me? And you can read the Bible the same way. It's actually how I read the Bible as well. A little bit different, obviously, because the Bible was written 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, depending on which part you're reading. Whereas most of the books we read today tend to be a lot more recent. Although if you're reading Aristotle, man, he was talking to a whole different group of people than us. So being aware of that gives you context so that you can gain understanding and meaning, so you can then start to apply it. I think so many of us are like, we read every book this way. How does this apply to me? The Bible or any other book? How does this apply to me today? And it's literally the last question you should be asking. What did it say? Like, you just read. Here's a perfect test. Go read a chapter of a book. Okay. Go read a chapter of a book, any book, pick any one. And then the next day, go tell somebody what it said. I'm going to bet you can't tell them a whole lot.
Yeah.
So when you slow down and you actually read it for what is it saying? What does it say? You're actually intentional about it. Words that I don't understand, I look up in a dictionary. If I'm reading the Bible, I go look them up in Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic, and I truly understand what people were trying to get across. when I spend that much time in it, while I'm not getting quantity of books, I'm getting quality of books that are valuable. So I'm super intentional about what I read too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just going to read anything. So that would be some of my advice on like reading. Stop the Audible thing. That's you get nothing from it except for maybe a little bit of enjoyment and about 2% of what you hear, unless you're taking notes. Now, if you want to listen to an Audible and take notes out beside and that type of thing, keep a journal, that's different. But if you're listening to Audible while you're driving your car, dude, I'll go to my grave saying this. I'll test any one of you, and you couldn't tell me 2% of what's in that book. Be intentional about your learning. If you're gonna take the time to learn something, go learn it. Like seriously. Because what you do is you glean maybe 2 or 3 little golden nuggets out of it, and you think you're amazing because you got some new piece of knowledge, but you don't even know how to use it. You don't understand it or what it meant or how and when to use it. It's one of the big issues we see when we coach contractors. Funny enough, they're doing the right thing in most cases. They're just doing it at the wrong time. And that's the key. When we can do the right thing at the right time, that propels our learning much faster.
Yeah, no, great answer. Great answer. You definitely elaborated a lot more than I thought you would on that. But
Sorry about that.
but
reading's a passion for me.
Yeah, no, it's good. I've also slowed down on the consumption of how many books I read. One, because I reread it. If there's a day that might go by, if I'm reading a book and I try to read it, a portion of it every day. And, but if a day goes by, I'll even start the chapter over. And I've recently backed off on buying new books and started rereading some of the books that I already have on my shelves and stuff like that, there's so much good stuff there. And then I'm jumping on to the next thing. And I almost feel like it's a race.
What are you reading? What are you reading right now?
Right now, oh man, I just started. Why I asked you the yearly book. One of my yearly books is Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David.
Oh, that's a good book.
That just has become one of my yearly books. And then one of a quick read. I read John Maxwell's probably about 3 times a year. Leadership 101. It's just a quick read. I can read it in about 30, 40 minutes, but I take that with me a lot when I'm traveling. If I'm on the plane, and I try to find those times, like I try not to waste time, right? So if I'm on a plane, I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to watch a movie. I'm not saying that I don't watch 20 minutes of something, but I try to use that time, wisely, be more intentional with that time, because when am I going to get another 4 hours when I don't have very good cell phone service? I probably can't work on my laptop. So why not break a book out and start reading a book? And if I fall asleep reading the book, kudos, to me for actually resting my eyes while reading a book. Yeah. So that's why I kind of wanted to get your spin on that, because I agree. It's not the amount of books, it's the quality. It's the quality of what I'm getting out of the book and the quality of the books that I'm consuming today. And I get that choice of what media I'm taking, what I'm digesting, mentally, what am I feeding myself? And where am I at? What season of my life am I in? And where do I need more education? Am I trying to educate myself, or am I just trying to learn a new skill?
You made a great point there. What season of your life are you in? Because there's been some things we've talked about that I'm probably a little further along in my journey than maybe a lot of your listeners. Mm-hmm. So my advice there is like, hey, don't try to be me. Just try to take the first step. Like if it's reading 10 minutes a day, read 10 minutes a day. That's a good first step. Because here's what you'll find. You'll find that you'll start to hunger for it, especially if you're reading something that's good or valuable. And all of a sudden that 10 minutes becomes 15 and then it's 20. And so like we talked about my spiritual journey, I started reading the Bible kind of sporadically. And then it was like once a week. And then I started doing like 15-minute devotionals, something like that. And now, I've worked my way along my journey. Most every day, I'm in that Bible at least an hour, at least. I've been studying Genesis since December 1st. I'm not even through chapter 1 yet. We run a contractor fellowship group with a bunch of guys all over the country. We meet every Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. We just had it today. and we're studying Proverbs. We've been doing this for 18 months.
Wow.
We just finished chapter 11. We're going to start in chapter 12 next week. And
Wow.
there's 37 chapters, something like 41. And so it like gives you an idea, like, and it's been fantastic because our attendance is actually going up because we're diving deep into it and really getting some understanding behind it. And everybody's in a different place. You got some people that are way ahead. You got some people that are just starting, and those people are rising, and these people are seeing a new perspective. So it's been super valuable to be in that type of situation. That'd be another piece of advice. Find somebody else to read that really good book with and test each other. That's a great way to retain what it is that you're learning. And not like a book club, more like an intense study. So just some pieces of advice there.
Amen to that. Good stuff, Jim. Great stuff. Well, man, I hate to say this, but we are at an hour and 15 minutes. What a great episode. No, it's great. I'm going to actually have to watch this because there was so much stuff that you were talking about. And don't be surprised if I hit you up in Messenger with some other questions, like about some things. But man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Can I add something? It'll be short, I promise.
Completely. Go ahead.
If people want to learn more about this whole PH7 and living prosperously and that kind of stuff, we have a new podcast. It's actually out right now. It's on YouTube. It's called Prosperous Human. You can go find it. We haven't really promoted it yet because I'm trying to get a good amount of content on there before I actually do that. But there is an introduction. There's actually a few interviews along the way of some very prosperous folks out there. And that's what we're going to continue to do. We want to just help others kind of break through the lies of the world out there and go, okay, maybe there's a different way to approach this thing called life. So that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for what you do. And you've definitely made an impression and an impact on my life. And I'm sure the guests, our viewers, rather, are definitely different after listening to what you had to say today. I saw some good questions coming through there. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for everyone for listening. And if you tuned in late, man, please catch us on the replay, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and of course, Facebook.
You said you had some questions, Ty.
Yeah.
Feel free to call me, contact me, message me, send a smoke signal, whatever you got to do. Here to help out with those questions, however I can.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Jim.
All right.
Until next week, you guys take care of each other. We will see you next week. Thank you.
See you, everybody.